Hey, what's up, everybody? I want to welcome y'all to Surviving the Game podcast, The Addict's Guide to Recovery, episode 1. My name is Chad, and this is Steven. And
Hello.
And we are your hosts. Just want to thank everybody for joining us today. We're going to be talking with Rob about a little bit about his life and his experiences. So before we get into it, though, we want to thank the Wildwood Reserve Barbershop here in Murfreesboro for allowing us to use their space to record this podcast. The Wildwood Reserve Barbershop is located at 1330 Northwest Broad Street in Murfreesboro, and you can reach them at 615-962-8366 or online at www.barbershop.com. All right, guys, what's going on, y'all? How y'all doing tonight?
Pretty good, man.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm doing great.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. You
Well,
know, it's a get away from the house. So
There you go. There you go.
Get away from the babies for a minute.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
take a good break.
Gotta take a break every now and then, man. Hey, I want to appreciate you, let you guys know that I really appreciate y'all, doing this with me, man. It really means a lot. But before we get into it, man, I'm gonna let Rob introduce himself. Just to, go ahead.
My name's Rob Flores. I'm from Kentucky. 36 years old. I'm currently a barber. Been a barber for 7 years now. Basically been a barber since I got out of prison. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Heck yeah, man. That's awesome.
Mhm.
So for anybody that really doesn't know what we're doing here today, this is a podcast about not just about addiction, but about recovery and really about life. And it's something that all three of us have quite a bit of experience in.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I'd definitely say that.
Right on. Steven, you got anything you want to say before we get started?
Now let's go ahead and get started.
Let's get started. All right, man. So we're just gonna get right into it. So this is gonna be like more of an interview style podcast today. So first off, Rob, tell us a little bit about like what it was like for you growing up, man.
So, I could, as far as back as early memories of growing up, 5, 6, 7, had good memories, honestly. There was, pretty much good memories at that time period. Then obviously drugs got involved with my family and my home. I would say 7, 8, 9 years old. That's when things started going pretty drastic in my home. That's when violence started coming in. My mom's multiple boyfriends. I don't, not to say anything about my mom like that, but
Right.
there were so many men coming in and out of the house. And then obviously she got with a guy that cooked meth at a young age, so there was a lot of anhydrous and antidote and stuff like that being cooked in the home at a young age, and with that stuff being experiencing things that you see, at that time, and it was pretty drastic.
Yeah, had probably a big influence on your life, huh?
Oh yeah, definitely. I would definitely say that. To talk about a little bit further into the podcast, but it's definitely things that are come out of me about abandonment issues and things of that nature, and where that course of my life took a turn. Constantly fighting. People up all night, just seeing those things as a kid, you really don't understand what's going on. But I wanted to be in a way like kind of draw me near to it.
Sure. Yeah.
So.
Man, I want to say something like about that, your story and the way that you're describing how you grew up. And this is just to identify with any other addicts out there that have struggled. I didn't grow up around that. I didn't grow up in a household like that. I grew up in a household that was loving, caring. Both my parents stayed together, still together, to this day. And yet I still found myself in addiction, so it
don't discriminate.
It doesn't discriminate, man. And I think that's important, for people that have no experience with addiction, because you get a lot of people that don't know something and they want to, assume that it's this way or that way. But I just wanted to, kind of bring that up a little bit. But yeah, man, continue.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point, you know, and that's why our testimonies in our life, it's very important because we can, with our testimonies and things that we can go through, that especially with this podcast and bringing people on that grew up different, it can reach different people.
Absolutely.
Right,
Yeah.
and like you said, drugs have no pick. You know what I mean? It don't. I mean, it don't. You know, it don't at all, and it can affect anybody and everybody.
Absolutely.
You know, like I said, it was a very violent home, and I watched things, and I wanted to be, not really say that I wanted to be partake into those things growing up, but that was all it was around.
Yeah.
You know, and unfortunately, you know, if you're a parent, you have kids, and all this stuff is going on, and you're obviously messed up 24/7. You don't know who has the attention of your kids and what they're teaching you.
Bro.
You know, and especially growing up in a home where my actual father was not around.
Yeah.
You know, and so I was constantly, you know, loving my mom, but constantly looking at gravitating towards a man and what he's doing, because I was a man. You know, I was a young boy, so I wanted to be that man. You know, so I watched what a lot of guys were doing and picked up a lot of things and realized that now that a lot of those things were really
some bad influences.
Yeah, some very bad influences, you know, and so you know, looking at them in those things, I think back right now and just, you know, man, you know, and that stuff continues to play off, you know, what they taught me. I obviously, as much as I don't want to say it, I'm pretty sure there was a lot of young folks that were around me in my 20s that looked up to the same group of guys I was hanging out with, and we affected them the same way.
You know, man, that's so true, but there's silver linings in everything, and one of them is the way that you were going to raise your children now after growing up a certain way. You know, it's important to stop the cycle, right?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I can imagine that you think about that, you know, as you think, because I know you got a small little boy, right?
Well, I got a 17-year-old daughter,
Okay.
16-year-old daughter, a little over a 2-year-old daughter, and a little over a 1-year-old son. And, you know, like you, but my 17-year-old and my oldest ones, they've seen a part of me that my young ones will never know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And,
amen to that.
Yeah, amen to that. You know, and thank God for that. You know,
Sure, man.
So, and don't get me wrong, it's still from those seeds that I planted then.
Yeah.
I'm still dealing with now through my older ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a work in progress, and it takes every day to have to get up and really tell myself and look myself in the mirror, and, you know, and have to exercise the good things out of me, you know, to kill out that old man daily. You know?
Yeah, you know, man, like for my, like I had a daughter growing up. I have a daughter. I still got her. You know, she's still around.
She still
my daughter.
claims me.
Yeah, still claims me. But I had to do a lot of damage control after I got into recovery, man. And you know, I was kind of oblivious to the trauma that I was bringing in the house.
Yeah.
You know, I honestly, I felt like I wasn't hurting anybody. But some people suffer in silence, and a lot of times that's your kids, and that affects them. So, you know, I had to do a lot of soul searching through recovery, and also had to make an amends to her and give her the opportunity to share with me things that I was not aware of that affected her. And, you know, it was tough, obviously, to hear your child say some things that I had no idea about. And, but man, it was such an experience that brought us closer together after that.
Thank God.
Yeah, yeah, you know, and so I'm grateful for that, man. But I don't know about you, man, but it took me a few tries to get this thing, you know, in the right direction.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it was a battle where I'd get clean, fall off, or get clean, be good, fall off, get clean, and you know, later on in this podcast, it'll get to the point where I tell you like what I'm experiencing now.
Sure, man, sure.
You know, what I'm going through and what I'm really paying attention to, and doing a real deep dive inventory of who I am.
Yeah.
You know, so you know those things matter, but yeah.
So let me ask you, man, Stephen, you can jump in at any time that you want, brother. But
I'm just listening.
No, you're good. I just want you to know, anytime, just hop in whatever you want, you know. And what were some of your early experiences with using, or what do you think had an impact, before you actually started using, like, peer pressure or, anything like, that, you know, that kinda led to you using that first time?
So really what it was is, you know, when my mom and them finally did come home, they were all partying in her bedroom. My mom had this broken door. And the door was always off the hinge by one hinge at least, so it was just kind of hanging, so it wasn't always together. And it was at the very end of the hallway, you know. So out of my other siblings, I was the one that was always kind of curious of what was going on because I loved my mom that much, you know, and I wanted to be around her. So I would remember just creeping down the hallway and like kind of peeking at the door. And they'd always play darts in her room. And you know, it was the party room, and so it was big enough, and they would always play darts, and you know, so many people over there, and I would watch them and listen to them, and I would see them pass the meth pipe around.
Oh wow!
You know, and I'd see them out there with a torch, and I'd watch them, and you know, I was curious of what that was. And one day, another guy that was over there, him and his son was over there, meaning was hanging out, and you know, whatever, young and curious, and they ended up leaving the house. And he was like, "Hey man, have you ever?" I'm like, "Nah, but you know, I've been watching. You know, I've been watching.
I know how to do it."
Yeah, and I was like, you know, matter of fact, you know, I've been watching my mom's bedroom. I know exactly where they've been keeping it at. You know, and boom, one thing led to another, and you know, at that age, I was probably 12 years old when I first smoked methamphetamines.
Wow.
Yeah, and we was in that bedroom, and you know, whatever. I'm not gonna go too deep diving into giving any type of glory. But you know, one thing led to another. We was in there smoking. Yeah. And man, I can just remember, you know, the first taste of it and what it did to me. You know, but you know, thinking about it now, man, I was very young at that age. I had no business, and then you know, really honestly, that stuff had no business in my home. You know. Yeah. So and that took off from there. Obviously, from that, it was me. By the age of 14, 15, I was the guy in the neighborhood that was introducing that to all the other kids that I was hanging out with. Yeah. You know, so you can only imagine that the people in the neighborhood, their parents were like, "You better stay away from his house," you know, like constantly. Now, you know, that's kind of what it turned into. And you know, so. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, and I used to look at that as a badge of honor, right? So if other kids' parents didn't like me, I thought that was cool. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like to be that guy. Yeah. But
I couldn't even go and knock on the door.
All right. Yeah. Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like you know, like you know, mom was like, "What's he doing here?" And he come out like, "Hey man, I'll meet you down the street in a couple minutes."
I was gonna say, yeah, man, you meet me on the other side of the street.
That, and it was more of that than mostly going to, you know, we'd had this little thing figured out because you know, getting off the school bus, like, "Look, bro, I'll meet you down there at the corner." Or, you know, things like that, because you know, my house, the cops were there all the time. You know what I mean? Like through the violence and after all that, and people going to jail. Like, man, my house was that house in the neighborhood. You know, so it became the targeted house. You know, and it was the highlight house of the neighborhood. Everybody looked at it like, you know, I felt bad really for the 89-year-old woman that lived next door to us. You know,
there's always that person, you know, that's living next door that is just kind of caught up in
watching
it.
everything.
You know,
oh, she probably called the cops more we know, you know.
Thank God, right?
Yeah.
You never know, man. She might have saved your life.
Yeah, she probably did. You know, she probably did. But with that, you know, that experience, what happened is I was 16 and I was still getting messed up and stuff, and right there I was struggling with school. At that point, I was being really rebellious and not going to school, but you know, there was nobody there to teach me anything, and there was no responsibility. You know, my mom wasn't making me go to school. You know what I mean? She was just surviving, doing dope and stuff herself. You know, so at that time, you know, we were really broke and stuff like that. So I started peddling, selling, and figured out, hey man, I can get new kicks for this, new kicks for that. You know, at 16, I'm hanging out with 20-year-old something women. You know, and that's where I met the first mother of my child, and I was 16. And you know, she kind of, at that time, she really didn't get involved. Her family was, but she was kind of like away from the drug scene. Yeah. So she kind of took me away from it, you know, and it was like, dang, she has an apartment, you know, she may have other kids, but man, I feel like a grown man. I can go, you know, and I moved in with her. Wow. You know, at 16 years old, and everything was cool. That should tell you how much that my home was. My mom didn't even care. This woman was like 23, 24 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, that's wild. don't think I could ever.
Yeah, you know, and I moved in with her. She pushed me through school. You know, there was a lot of like, hey, you know, incentives like you better go to school today or you,
Okay.
you know.
Okay, I got you.
But
You know, like when you're that young, and especially if you grew up in a household that didn't necessarily have a lot of money or the latest game consoles or the clothes and stuff, like that lifestyle seems very enticing, and it's unfortunate that that's a lot of ways that people get sucked into that life, is just because they grew up with an idea of what's important, and I think all kids go through that, where they think the most important things is what your friends are doing and what they're gonna you know, think of you and stuff like that. But I can absolutely relate to hanging out with the older crowd. I had older siblings, and so, you know, a lot of times my sister I would hang out with her and her friends, you know, and it's that same kind of thing where when I got into high school and like all my friends my age, like they didn't know any of these older kids, you know, and I did. So I felt like I was somebody just because of that, and I had access to things that a lot of my friends didn't, you know, just because of that. You know.
That made you very important in that time.
I thought so.
Yeah.
I thought so. Yeah.
See, I grew up like, I guess, quite the opposite or whatever. I was the oldest of five, and you know, so I had to set the example. Everything was harder for me. I had to, you know, set an example for them, but then I also had to, you know, take care of my brothers when my stepdad was just being a complete jerk. You know, I'd keep them quiet or keep them in line. You know, we'd keep the house cleaned up for when they came home. You know, because, you know, if not, you know, be grounded or something.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure on somebody.
Yes, you had a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like this will give you an example. Like I finally went to my first high school party on graduation night.
Oh wow.
Wow.
You know, like I was super sheltered. You know, super. You know, I had to take care of my family. You know, at a very young age, and that pressure and stuff or whatever. So I'm just saying that just to. Because it don't discriminate.
Yeah.
It don't matter.
I mean, also, like, if you were so responsible and had all those responsibilities, being a responsive child, that when you first get your taste of that, it almost seemed like a bit of freedom.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You know,
Yeah, I can imagine that. And then that's probably what.
So, like, I can't imagine, you know, the meth at 8 years old and everything like that. Believe me, I've seen it, you know, my last years of addiction, being on the streets, you know, I've seen some crazy stuff. And then I wasn't allowed to see my son for 10 years. And then finally, I was so scared of rehab for so long, like that it don't even make sense. The lie I told myself was, if you go to rehab and it doesn't work, then you ain't got nothing left to do but die.
Yeah.
But in reality, we kept doing them drugs, we kept doing everything, you know, like we're not supposed to be here, you know.
You know, they say, man, and I think this is true, when the fear of staying the same outweighs the fear of change, you'll change. You know, and even
That's
though, being an addict, you're miserable, you can't stop on your own, you want to stop on your own, but at the same time, you feel like if you do stop, you're missing something.
Oh yeah.
That life won't be the same, and it's a like a weird thing, because like life isn't fun when you're in that moment, when you're, you know, heavily addicted, but for some reason that disease in your brain tells you that it'll be fun, or it won't be fun if you quit using.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, it's already not fun, you know? Yeah.
When I think about it now, no, none of it.
No.
None of it.
No.
You know. Yeah, you know, even like certain dramatic events that happened while I'm in my drug addiction, it just made it worse because I was already deep in it, and it made it even deeper.
Yeah.
You know, like losing the first mother of my child. You know, that drove me down. That's what caused me to use the needle.
Yeah.
You know, was it an overdose or?
No. No, it wasn't an overdose. No.
Okay.
It was an accident with her other baby daddy and stuff like that. So, but because of that, you know, it's crazy because I always smoked, the drugs and,
Right.
or either, you know, snorted it, but then eventually I got around some dark people at that time, and all they were doing was, you know,
Yeah.
obviously using a different type
Yeah.
of way, and I was there for, you know, they say you are who you hang around.
Absolutely.
So dude,
Absolutely.
it took me literally, I'd say 4 days of hanging around these people, because I had nothing else, everything else,
Yeah.
it was in shambles, and hanging around these people and trying to put a roof over my head, and I seen everything that they were doing. It's like, man, here I am at 20-something years old, and I'm really thinking about doing
Yeah.
what they're doing, and I did.
Oh,
you know?
of course.
So-
You know, it's only a matter of time, like you said, when you're hanging out with people, and when you're in, you know, in addiction, the ultimate goal is to get as high as you possibly can.
Right,
So
right.
when you see somebody else doing something different and they're getting way higher than you are,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, you start to let that idea, you know, manifest in your head. And
Yeah.
it's something that I would say 99% of the population at one point would never thought they would ever have done something like that.
Yeah, I would never would have thought.
Of
Even,
course
I mean,
not.
I was scared the whole time it was going on. Like I seen
Yeah.
them doing it like a different way,
Yeah.
and the whole time I was there, I was like, man, I don't know if I can do that. You know, and I was actually fighting with myself. You know, and just because you know, not saying because it was strictly women, but the women doing it, and they, you know, I just. Man, it was just a smooth way everybody was talking me into it. I was scared to death.
I
You
can
know?
imagine, yeah.
I remember the first time that I, you know, met somebody using the needle, and actually, like, they had it in my house.
Yeah.
And I remember just snapping off, like, how dare you even have that in my house?
Yeah.
You know, but then, you know, before too long, you keep hanging out with those same people.
Oh yeah.
You know,
man.
Yeah.
and then
Doesn't
here we
take
are.
long.
Yeah, man, it was like, you know, it's crazy, and that's why my faith is the way it is. Why seeing things now, how dark it was, like hanging around everybody being so messed up like that, man. And I ended up losing right after she passed, the mother of my child. I ended up losing 7 people right after that, like back to back. And that's what during that time of using that way, dude, it you know, it manipulated the way that I feel that the enemy has, and over those drugs, and the way that it can manipulate your mind, that seeing things for not what it is, but feeling other things. Like, man, it was a real dark, evil
Yeah.
time of my life at that moment, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, being around in a house somewhere way out in the country where there's 8 people in this home, and everybody you're looking at are plotting certain other ways. No wonder why people end up killing people and doing things,
man.
because that tension was so high that, you know, you were doing things to make sure you were saving your butt in the same home around these other people, and trying to act like you're tricking them in different games and manipulating modes. Man, it was that way of life there for a little bit,
It's,
you know.
that's addiction. It's selfish, right?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
only
So
looking out for ourselves, and you know, and you're right. A lot of people have done some things that alter their life forever,
Yeah,
all because of a drug,
yeah.
you know. But you know, just to keep moving. So what really got you to plant that? What planted that seed for you to maybe start to get into some kind of recovery, and what did that look like for you?
Well, I think that first, I think it was my long prison stint
Yeah.
that really caused me to get away from the drugs and really start thinking about my life and the people that I was involved with, the things just about my life, period. And I think it was probably about 2.5 years in that I really started doing some seeking, like, for me and who I am, and you know, realizing like who God is, you know, because you know, that's my way. I believe in a higher power. And that's where I kind of found myself in Him and my cell. Because we had TVs in prison, you have your own personal TV. So I had my own personal TV, and I had it on like TBN. And man, I remember just like listening to, it was actually TD Jakes at that time. And not saying, you know, I know right now there's a lot of stuff going on with that, but you know, but at that time, man, you know, God uses a lot of people. So at that time I was in my cell, you know, I was watching, I was trying to read my word. I didn't know nothing about it. It was King James Version. I'm over at the thou,
Man,
thou.
yeah, it's
you know,
tough.
It is.
I'm going through that right now.
Yeah.
And God, like, I feel so dumb sometimes.
Dude, I'm telling
it's
you.
such a complex language. you know?
Right.
I feel like the more you read it, the easier it gets, and then it's kind of just.
Well, now they got
nature
so
a little
many
bit.
versions, right? But you hear from a lot of the old heads. Like I now I know a lot of old pastors and a lot of people, and they're like, "Hey, man, like I don't read nothing but King James," and I'm like, "Man, am I missing something?"
Yeah, I'm NIV over here.
Right, you know, and you know, nowadays I read like an amplified version, so it kind of breaks it down, and but you know, it has the old way of writing and the new way. It kind of breaks it up
Yeah.
side by side. But no, man, I was in that cell, and man, it's so crazy because I was in my cell. I had a bunkie. He wasn't in there at the time. He was out doing something on the yard, and it was right before yard closed. So you know, the yard closed, I think at like 7, something like that. So it was probably like 5:45, and I was in there, man, and I was like, you know, he was talking about seeking him, and he'd draw near. If you draw near to him, you draw near to him, or draw near to you. And I remember being in that cell, and I lifted my hands up, and I was like, Lord, I don't know who you are. I don't know how to do this or what to say. I was like, you know, but I'm ready for change. I accept you in my heart, and no matter what type of domination nobody is or whatever,
Yeah.
what happened that day in the spirit, what I felt, you know, was so thick in that room, man, that I got up and started praising his name. And when I was praising his name, I had my hands up and I was weeping really heavy, and I knew that I felt like a thing inside of me was released, right? And man, I just couldn't quit weeping. I felt this thing come over me that I felt like at that time the weight was lifted off my shoulders, and that finally for the first time I felt like that I was a little bit free.
Yeah,
And,
that's powerful, bro.
Yeah.
That's powerful. I know, man, growing up, right, talked about living in a home that was filled with love and stuff, but for some reason, I just hated my own skin. I hated being me, you know, and I never really understood why that was. I always was looking at other people thinking, I wish I had their life, you know, and similar experience, you know, for me was when I truly did turn my will and my power over to God. Like I lost that feeling of not loving who I am, you know, and that all came with recovery, you know, and it was one of the things that honestly I wasn't expecting, because when I got in recovery, the only thing I wanted to do was stop using drugs and stop hating myself. And I got so much more than that, you know, but I don't think, you know, in my experience, and I feel like maybe this is y'all's too, that recovery without God isn't gonna work for me, you know.
A life without God.
Yeah, that's the same way with me, right? Like you go through like the sanctification process, you go through like this transformation, and I think what I messed up, not to fast forward it, but like, you know, you have this concept of, oh, look, I accepted Jesus Christ, my life's gonna be okay now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's gonna be no problems, and there's gonna be no trials, but that, you know, that's completely wrong, because it tells you, you know, for the
just
test
means you don't have to do it alone.
Right, exactly.
You're still gonna have struggles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, because during that time, you know, I'm not gonna get deep, but I was involved in prison, you know, and I was politicking heavy on the yard, and doing things that get involved with, you know, just the necessary life. And at that time when that happened, dude, I kind of walked away from everything. So it almost sparked a fear in me of the people that I was involved with on the yard, and the places I was, and the things that I was doing. Like what's the consequences and repercussions of this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, dude, and that even made me press on God even further, because it was like, Lord, you know, I don't know what's gonna happen. Like, dude, I want to be good. So, you know, there for that period of time, I got a job being a barber in prison,
Wow.
right? I got on, you know, I started cutting hair.
Started living good.
Yeah,
Living good.
So I was, you know, doing this, and you know, that kind of got me out of the yard. You know, it kept me busy because I was doing a job, you know, 5 days a week from 8 to 4. So, you know, and then like some people are like, what's up with you, man? You're like, you know, you changed up, man. You ain't the same. And I'm like, man, listen, bro, it's not that. I'm just trying to self-seek. You know what I mean? Like, and you know, a lot of people talked about me. A lot of people like, you know, whispered and gossiped, and I heard that. And I remember reading in the Bible said that it did that to him too.
Yes.
You know, so I was like, you know, man, it was a thing that I went through, and you know, I got out, and you know, after serving 5.5 years, I'm like, yeah, man, I can do this, right? And there's a big thing I realized. There's a big difference in commitment and connection.
Yeah.
You know, you can be connected all you want to, but if you're not committed, you're gonna fall off, right?
Every time. And it's you know, foxhole prayer, right?
Yeah.
Whenever you're in that situation. And that's how I was. I was a situational Christian at times where I needed God when things were falling apart. But when things started getting good again, I took control, or I felt like I achieved something.
Right.
And
It's like that Jelly Roll song. I only talk to God when I need a favor. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, man. And that was the case. I used to pray like God was a genie. And, and you know, I'm gonna get my wish. And
see, that's another thing that we mess around. We have this complex because we're human that we think that He's serving us.
Oh, wow, yeah.
You know, and really we're supposed to be serving Him instead of the way around.
You know, that's a good point, man. Because you know, I got paralyzed when I was 26 years old, man, and I went through this long period of time where I blamed everything and everybody, including God, for my situation, even though that nobody did anything to me.
Right.
What happened to me is 100% because of my own actions. And you know what really started making me realize like that, you know, trauma and suffering and things, they're necessary. And what really got me to look at that from a different standpoint is if Jesus could suffer, then who am I to not suffer, right? Yeah. And it's made me a better person. And really what I've learned is that when you're going through hard times, when you're struggling, or when things are falling down around you, that's when you're supposed to lean on God. We struggle to lean on God. That's supposed to bring you closer to God. And that really changed my life. It really changed how I felt about myself and my situation. You know, I stopped looking for the excuse and started taking responsibility for my life. And, you know, positive things started happening, man. And the most positive was I stopped hating myself. You know?
That makes a big difference all around.
Absolutely, man. You know, and it's that cycle. It's a catch-22, right? I want to stop hating myself. Well, I got to quit doing things that make me hate myself.
Right.
It's obvious now, but
I mean, there's so much guilt and shame that goes along, you know, with addiction and.
Right.
Oh yeah, you know, and then, you know, at one point it's so crazy that I get to know God, and then I'm out and I'm falling, and then I get this concept of going, I want to be ruler of my own kingdom, but now I'm gonna be mad at you because you don't bless me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Let's see how that works.
Yeah, let's see how that works. I mean, geez, man, it's crazy. You know, and it's crazy that, you know, something about pain is that, you know, hopefully, I think that a lot of times the people that realize, right, that a lot of people are like, well, God, you know, why is there so much pain in the world and things like that? Well, look, man, I pray sometimes to people that nowadays, and I pray for people, and sometimes like I hope that the pain becomes so unbearable that it gets you to submit to something else than what you're doing, right? Because, you know, because it got that to the point to me where there was just so much pain caused that it caused me at one point to look around and go, man, I can't handle this no more.
Yeah, if everything was easy all the time, you know, we wouldn't call on Him. So I feel like that has a lot to do with it too.
And then that builds your testimony of who you are, what you go through. You know what I mean? It makes you even stronger. And like you said, to lean on Him. Right, a lot of times it's like, what am I doing when things are starting to really get bad? Am I really leaning on Him like it says, or am I just putting it all on me and suspect I got it, put it on my own understanding? I don't.
No, you don't.
Because I know what Rob does on his own understanding. I end up over in left field somewhere, or at a bar lollygagging, and end up, you know, somewhere deep in jail. You know,
yourself locked up.
Right. So
another. Go ahead, Stephen. You got something?
No,
okay. Another thing that changed my life that somebody told me, and I really practice this today. It's you know, when you give God your pain and your worries and things like that, and you continue to worry over those things, you never gave it to God.
And never had faith.
Yeah, you know, so today for me, man, when I have something going on in my heart, or a struggle or anything, I truly do have time with God. I have time with God every day, multiple times a day. First thing in the morning, what I do is I get up. Before I do anything else, I go in there and I talk to God, and then I sit there and I just enjoy the moment, sit quietly, and then I go about the rest of my day, man. And I do not worry anymore. God will make a way. He always has. He always will. It may not be what I wanted.
Or on your timing.
On my timing, but it is exactly what I needed. And when I lay down at night, I sleep good.
Yeah.
You know, my conscience is clear, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. You know, that's worth more than all the money in the world. To have a clear conscience today.
Yeah. And that's a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
I thought I was an insomniac at one time. I
Yeah.
did. No, I just had a horrible conscience. I had a lot of stuff on my conscience.
Yeah.
And turning that over, man, you know, for me, recovery, and we can get into this a little bit about what recovery looked like for you, but for me, I had to try multiple times to get it right.
Yeah.
But for what worked for me was Narcotics Anonymous. That's where I went. That's where I found success. That's where I found freedom. And the 12 steps of Narcotics Anonymous, this is what I found out. I worked them. I worked all 12. And what I found out about that is that doing those steps, the sole point of doing those steps is to clear the wreckage, remove all the wreckage of your past, and to open a way up for you to truly have a relationship with God. You know, you get rid of all that pain, that fear, that embarrassment, that shame, that guilt from the things you've done to people, the things people have done to you, and some of that stuff I'd never talked about with anybody. And some of the stuff my family doesn't know, but I talked to my sponsor like I turned everything over to him like he was God, and I'm not glorifying him. I'm just saying, like, for this to work, I had to get brutally honest.
Yeah, you had to be an open book.
Yeah, an open book, man. And when I did that, I'm talking, if I could snap my fingers, I'd do it. I can't snap my fingers. I got these jackets on. But it was that fast. All that weight of all of these things was finally lifted, and for the first time in my life, I felt free. You know, and that's what's worked for me. So that's my testimony for recovery. What is recovery for you? What is the process you went through for you to find recovery, and how did that look?
Well, you know, like I said before, I was connected, not committed. So I had these times where I felt God, I walked away from it, right?
Yeah.
And you know, shout out to my aunt, uncle, and my dad. They've been running recovery centers for the last 20 years.
All right.
You know, so there for a while, my addiction, as I got a little bit up in age, and they started opening these recovery centers, they were like, "Man, you need help," and I wasn't listening, right? So there was a couple times that I've been there and in there, and like, yeah, this is cool, but forget this, I'm kicking the can, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
On to the next popsicle stand, you know, but not taking it serious.
Yeah.
I think that you know, which I came to a point where I was just serving God and hanging out, right? It's important to get involved with a group, and important to get people that are mentors and people that, you know, for me, especially are like spiritual counselors and guidance, and also, you know, trying to be aware and have discernment of people that God bring in my life and what they're telling me, you know, and really take that to an understanding of going, hey, this is really from God, or this is the correct way of doing things. So I felt like I've overcome a lot of different things in my recovery, but I always seem to fail, you know, and not, like I said to you earlier, you know, I hate to be like a 90-day Joe, where, you know, you go to these recovery centers and this dude's like, "Oh, I'm clean, buddy, I'm ready to go."
Yeah.
But,
You got it figured out.
Yeah, 90 days, he's right back there too, you know, been released right back, you know, but, you know, so what happened to me was like, okay, I can quit these other hardcore drugs and I can, you know, stay clean for a while, but then, hey, you know, I've been clean for a little bit, I can sip this drink and this alcohol. And that's what ended up happening, and you know, there was a lot of bad things going on here in the last year, you know, I've been almost clean now from alcohol and stuff like that for almost a year now, right? It's about 7 months, but it was really alcohol that started it, me thinking that, hey, since I don't do these other drugs, I can do these alcohol and be fine and know how to handle myself, but really it's not, it's the manipulating way of the enemy. And I was going through it so bad that, you know, Stephen over here, you know, people recognized what was going on. And I was like, look, man, I just need help. And Stephen helped me, and he got a hold of Hustle Recovery, and those guys helped me and had me. I went to a place in Whitley City called The Next Chapter. Shout out to them. Shout out to Next Chapter. Man, it's a really awesome spirit-filled place. They also do 12 steps. And man, I really, I was, at that point, I really realized to do a deep dive on who I am, and like as far as like the problems with me, right? Like how I treat my wife. Do I know what love is? Do I know these things? Like, because I can say I'm clean all day, but if I don't really have a full transformation to me in my walk, then I'll end up, there's only a matter of time.
Yeah, it's temporary.
Look, I'll just say, like, I met Rob, how long has it been now? A year?
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, he got a job here and here at the Wildwood Reserve, and he's a very talented barber, very talented.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, he's got a great persona too about him, you know, but you know, there was a few things in life that wasn't adding up, and whenever he reached out that, you know, he needed some help, you know, I made the phone calls, and he was actually like really surprised because, you know, we got him into treatment like right away.
Yeah, it was literally, they called 30 minutes, they're like, yeah, we'll be there today to come get you.
That's a little scary, right?
Yeah, I didn't even leave the barber shop while he was at my house that early in the morning, like honking the horn. I'm like, I don't want to go out there. You know, because I was like, I don't want to. Yeah, I'm like, I'm good. And he's like, no, you're coming out here. So I was like, all right, man. So I got out. He's like, hop in the truck, and you know, I hopped in the truck, and you know, I came over here to the shop, and they wouldn't let me leave, and he was like, no, they'll be here today. You know, and they called my wife. My wife's like, cool, I'll be bringing his clothes. He ain't leaving nowhere. You know, like as far as like he ain't leaving the shop. He's not gonna have an opportunity to come back home. So
yeah,
you know,
she was super mad.
Yeah, right. But you know, she did come up here and bring it and bring my clothes and stuff like that. They came and got me, and that's when I started realizing what MDMR therapy was.
Yeah.
You know, and how important that is. Now it can be triggering.
Let me ask you something before you get too far away from that. What exactly is MDMR?
So MDMR is a trauma therapy.
Okay.
Right, and they bring up trauma issues from like your past or when you're a child, which I heard it. They have it at the next chapter, but I was not there for like really long term, so I wasn't involved or like really get forward to go get involved in it. But I knew that planted that seed because I was like, hey, you know, we talked about it so much in class over there that I was like, man, I want to do that, try that. And my wife's been telling me about it too for a while, which. I you know, just fully admit I was ignoring it at that time because there was so much going on between me and her.
Yeah.
But I got out. Once I got out, you know, I signed up and I started going to therapy at MDMR therapy, and I started doing it, and started bringing up some traumas and really started answering some questions that I had in myself that no wonder why I've made. So these decisions that I've made when things start getting hectic, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So like I was just gonna say, so that is very similar to, from my process that I went through the fourth and fifth step.
Right.
Bringing up all that.
Oh yeah, like you said, an open book. You got to be truthful, right?
Yeah, it's tough, man, but such a rewarding experience. Also, man, shout out to a good network. You know, you had a bunch of people surrounding you and not letting you fail. They were gonna do whatever it took to get you on the right path. You know, your guys here at the shop and stuff.
Oh yeah. You mean like giving everybody a shout out?
No, I'm just saying, like, just shout
I
out.
was saying that I got a whole line
Yeah,
of
got a
this
whole
here,
line. I'm just saying, shout out to having a good network.
Oh
of
yeah,
people.
you know, and also honestly, to tell you the truth, not just the barbershop or Steven or Hustle Recovery or my, you know, like honestly, you know, my mom, you know, I can't really say right now. She's been homeless for years. I really don't know where she's at any time. You know, and that's something that I constantly deal with and battle with, even though that, you know, because I love her, right?
Yeah.
And my, you know, really, my aunt and uncle really has been a backbone for me, and always constantly trying to, you know, speak life in me, especially my uncle and aunt, and plant good seed in me. You know, even at the time when I had too much pride and I was rejecting it. Yeah. You know, and it, you know, for them to continue to put that time in me, you know, over and over and over and over.
Yeah,
you know,
that's love, man, and like you said, you can reject it, but they weren't willing to.
No, man, listen, my aunt is so spiritual, brother. You know, it really is, and this is really, I'm gonna tell you a true story. So I was out drinking and I was bar hopping and I was really just struggling by myself. You know, my wife's going through it. I'm not home. I'm supposed to be home. Yeah. You know, and out of nowhere, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm driving drunk, dude. I'm talking about like one eye covering the other eye. Yeah. You know, and my phone, I get a text message, right, and I I remember looking at it from my aunt, oh no. You know what I mean? Like, what's going on, because, you don't want them, they're so spiritual. You don't really want them to know what's going on with you, right? Like, hey, I don't want them to know what's really happening,
I remember
it's hard to hide.
The bowling alley looking for you that day.
Oh, yeah, I know. So, yeah, they did.
It's hard to hide being drunk like that.
Right,
They're gonna know.
Yeah, so I was like, dang, I got a text message.
Okay.
Hey, it was a text message, so I got a text message. I'm like, man, what's going on? It's like 2:30 in the morning. And I look, and it's a picture of a stop sign. Yeah. And so when I seen that stop sign, and I'm staring at it, and I'm starting to think about what I'm doing, and the next message it came through said, I don't know what's going on with you, Rob, but God woke me up and told me to send this to you.
That's amazing.
And
wow.
man, if I can tell you the feeling that went over my body, like, dude, I immediately just went home and went and paid the piper to my wife. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, okay, all things are done right. This time, like, something is gonna happen if I don't listen to this. So I went straight back to the house, so, things like that. Thank God that I have people like that in my life that, do that.
It's amazing, like, how God uses people too.
Oh, yeah. Listen, the story I was telling him on the phone, it's crazy that, like you said, God uses people, and he does. Listen, I was reading out of Lazarus when Jesus told Lazarus to come out of the tomb. And, of course, he was dead, right? And he told him to step forward. And when he stepped forward, Lazarus had the grave clothes on. They wrapped him. You know what I'm saying? Because back then they would wrap you.
Yeah.
And, he told Lazarus to step forward. And when he told him to step forward, he didn't tell Lazarus to take off his grave clothes. He told the people around, everybody was around Jesus, he was, hey, y'all take off his grave clothes. So that grave clothes is a representation of who he was, his past and everything about him. So God had somebody else take him off. So like I was telling Chad, I was like, like this podcast and spiritual leaders and people that teach, people that are giving, planting good seed in your life, man, God sent those people in your direction, you know what I'm saying? And they'll help you take off that old man, you know what I mean? And that death that was been following us around. And God knows for so many years I'm walking around acting like you can't smell me. Like, come on, man.
A mile away.
Yeah, come on, man.
Yeah,
man, like I couldn't believe how manipulated the enemy was, having me over here walking around Walmart at 12 o'clock at night with sunglasses on, acting like nobody don't know what's going on with me.
You never done that before.
Yeah, like, man, you can smell me a mile away, but.
Yeah. So like with your answer and you that text message, this is something I believe too. And we'll never know what God has prevented from happening.
Yeah.
So, you talked about going home and, getting right with your wife.
Yeah.
It's like, like if your aunt hadn't texted, who knows, man, you could have ran over and killed someone. I mean, anything, and we'll never know what these situational experiences stop us from doing that are blessings,
Well, it was also like the blessing, you said that too. Like, man, I remember when I, was in deep prayer and locked up because, when I got out of prison, I moved to Florida and then got locked up again and then moved here. But I remember locked up in Florida that I asked God, man, to bring me a good wife.
Yeah.
I said, Lord, I want a wife, Lord. You know the desires of my heart. Give me a good wife and give me a son. And, that's what he gave me. And for what he gave me and then me getting back, I was so messed up that I didn't even see the blessing that he gave me.
Right in front of your face.
Wow.
Dude, my wife has put up so much of me, you know what I mean? And not only just putting up with me when I was getting back in my addiction, but putting up with the person who I am internally. Because, I was a mess, you being an addict, I know me, I was a very greedy person, selfish person.
100%.
Addiction is selfish.
Yeah, I don't care who you are, you can think that you're not, but if you're an addict, you are 100% a selfish person.
Yeah, and for her to sit there and, how I look at it now, to love me past my mess. Yeah. Man, you don't have too many people like that.
You don't. You don't have too many people like that, man. And it's something that, for your experience, she sees something that you didn't. Yeah. And that you couldn't see in that moment,
Yeah, definitely. Baby, when you watch this, I love you. I just want to tell you that. I love you. Hey, God and you, I just want you to know that I'm so grateful. So grateful.
That's a blessing right there, bro. That's amazing, man. I am so grateful for your experiences, man, because you can help so many people just by your testimony. And you talked about blessings of different things and mentioned the podcast. That's all we want to do here, right? Is just to possibly help somebody else.
And the thing that you saying, I don't mean to switch the subject,
No,
but
go-
with the
go
MDMR
for it.
that I found out,
Yeah.
that at first, they prep you for the MDMR. They had to prep you first, right? And you have to let them know that if you're an addict or you were an addict, because it can be so triggering
Yeah.
that it could cause issues with your mental afterwards, right? Because it can trigger you, like you
Send
start
you
thinking,
right back out.
right? So
Yeah.
they want to make sure that you're fully prepped for it. And us as men, me never going to therapy, right, and opening up to somebody, and really just like letting some things out, because for so many years it's been so suppressed that us men have to have this masculinity that
Yeah.
we can't talk to nobody or open up things, and we got to walk around with these things on our shoulders and deal with these things by ourselves, right? Because there's not too many friends. I mean, now I know some, but there's not too many friends that you can just call up and be like, man, I'm going through it.
No,
Hey,
it's-
like, look, dude, I got to work tomorrow. I ain't got
Yeah.
time for this. Click. You know?
Well, and it's people, like, and that's another thing about like being a man, right? Is like you perceive that as being weak,
Yeah,
right? And,
yeah.
and you're afraid that they're going to use that against you someday. Because I've gone to therapy, and did that whole thing. It didn't work, but not because therapy doesn't work, but it was because I was unwilling to get honest with that person, because I was trying to save face. But I'm gonna let this slide right here. But they say you can't save your face and your ass at the same time.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You gotta pick one.
Oh,
Absolutely.
man, yeah, that's crazy.
That's my one cuss word for the day.
Jeez,
We'll see.
Yeah, so
We'll
what,
see.
so what I found out was that, being open, and I'm gonna be a little open with y'all and share one
Come
thing out
on,
of the
man.
MDMR, right, is that we come to this place and we call it the window. And I named it the window because it was like one of the first experiences of traumas that I've had as a young age, that I didn't realize when I was talking about it or bringing it up to the therapist that how deep and how true it really was. That so when we came to this place and we call it the window, back when I was between 8, 9, 10, when drugs were really picking up in my home, I remember that my mom would be gone for days at a time, and it'd just be me and my little sister and brother, and I would sit on the couch and I would have my arms up on the top and my head would be up against the window like I'm looking out.
Yeah.
And every car that passed by, or every car that I seen coming from the right side, not the public hero, I would hope that it would be my mom to show up, right? And she never would. So I would cry at that window for hours, bro, where I couldn't even really breathe. I remember walking around like trying to blow up my nose as a kid for a long time. And I would go to sleep, wake up, watch TV, go to my slippers, go back to the window. And one of the things that they do is like, I need you to close your eyes, and I need you to feel your body from top to your soul, from the top of your head to the sole of your feet, from your crown to your soul. And I need to remember the feeling that you had. And it came about the same feeling I remember that I had as a kid, is the same feeling that I have when things go wrong, right? Or when things, me and my wife get into it. And so I realized that I'm really suffering from an abandonment issue. And that abandonment issue produces the alcohol and drugs. You get what I'm saying? Because
It's fuel for it.
right,
yeah.
and it's what set off my actual drug addiction. So that's what I'm saying. I realized some things that at a young age, when they were gone, and when my mom and them finally did come back around, and the friends came back around, it was hers, I had to portray, because I didn't want them to leave me or want them to go anywhere, that I ended up starting to become them. Right, so I was like, okay, if I do the things that you're doing,
Where you were trying to fit in.
right, or I'm trying to fit in, and I feel like if I do this, you won't leave me. So ultimately, it progressed me to be this person I was never set out to be.
We got a word for that in recovery. That's character defects.
Oh yeah.
What that is it's everybody has them. We don't necessarily know what our character defects are.
Yeah.
We find out through therapy, like you're talking, and people pleasing is one of the most common ones, and it's just all stems from a fear of wanting to be loved.
So is that part of like a 12-core thing in there? Because mine was ownership entitlement. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine. And that's definitely what mine was in my addiction, But with all that, also with that, I also realized, like I told you, now in my addiction, in my recovery, I have realized, looking back at all the relationships that I've seen, right, my mom, that I honestly could sit here and say, I've been wrong about loving not only myself but others my whole entire life. So this, now that I'm going through and this stuff that I'm going through with me and my wife and stuff, it's a good thing that I'm learning these things and being open, because now I'm realizing, hey, I'm gonna be true.
Yeah.
Right? So instead of telling my wife all these, hey, I'll talk to you just to get her off my back, and never really do anything about it, my works is dead. So now I'm realizing, hold up, I really don't know how to love. So I was honest to her. I was like, you know, because everybody thinks once you even get clean off drugs, everything's gonna be okay.
No.
Well, if, in your addiction, if you did a lot of betrayal and a lot of trust issues, especially if you have a significant other or family, we don't realize that there's so much more to be rebuilt. Just because I'm clean now don't mean everything's over.
Man, I'm glad you said that, because I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, that as addicts we think that everybody needs to jump on board now that we're clean, and it's like, wait a minute now, what about these past 18 years?
Oh yeah, my brother was my worst critic or whatever. So I remember when I first got clean, he was like, yeah, so you got 60 days now, whatever. So we're about 13 days away from a relapse. You know, like he was hard on me. Like, and he was not kidding. But I mean, like, you know, how could I be mad? You know, because that was all I'd ever shown him. You know,
it takes time. It takes time to.
But you know what? That, I mean, that fueled me though, or whatever. You know, so I was like, all right, just keep watching. You know, and you know.
I mean, I would say some people have, you know, a lot of times though, once you start getting right though, you realize constructive criticism, real friends gonna tell you something that's gonna feel like it's gonna hurt. You know, you get what I'm saying? Like, they're gonna say something that's gonna make you be like, dang man, that kinda hurt. But he's being true. You get what I'm saying? And once we mature more and mature, we're gonna realize like, man.
Well, we didn't mess everything up in one day, so we're, you know.
Bro, well, that's what I'm saying too. I tell him, like, bro, I'm gonna get mad because you ain't gonna believe in my recovery for these 2 years, and then he's gonna be over going, boy, you destroyed everything for the last 16. You know, it takes longevity. So I feel like when you don't get this pat on your back, and a lot of people are like, hey man, I'm proud of you, because that's what we suspect, right? Sure. I'm a changed man. And when we don't get that, you know, it's a lot of times if we don't really do a deep dive of who we are and our mental and change and have a true transformation, it can cause us to go back.
And again, that's where the network comes in, and that's where trust in the process and allowing people to be where they're at, and not necessarily. That's another one of my defects, is I want you to be where I'm at. So if I think I'm right, I've got to make you understand why you're wrong and I'm right. And I don't have to do that. You can be right where you're at, and I can be where I'm at, and we can come together and make something happen. But it's a lifelong thing. We'll do this for the rest of our life. I believe that, whether it's you know, an everyday thing that you have to do something, or it's just a kind of a conscious effort to remember what it was like in the past, so we don't go back. Look, man, I want to thank you for coming on here and sharing this.
We really appreciate it.
It has been an experience, and for our first episode, I think it's been a good one, man. Steven, you got anything, brother? Anything anybody want to shout out?
I'd like to give one praise. Like,
come
man,
on,
if you're out there and you're addicted and you feel like that there's no hope, or you're lost, I'm telling you that there's change, and there's better days ahead of you if you make a decision and come to a point to be able to submit, throw your hands up and surrender. I had nothing. I'm a married man. I have kids that I've lost in the past from going to prison. I got custody of them back. I have new babies. God is definitely restoring my life and giving a full-blown restoration, full-blown transformation. So if you're struggling, reach out to somebody.
Yeah. And if you don't know how to do that, or you know, you don't know where to turn, hit us up on this podcast, man. You can reach us at Surviving the Game podcast at yahoo.com. If you want to send us an email, you can comment under the video, whatever. But help is available, and there's no shame in getting help. You know,
no, not at all. Reach out.
Reach out, definitely. Again, I want to thank you, Steven. I want to thank you for being a part of this too, man.
Thank you, Chad, for bringing me along.
Of course. And so we're going to post the link to this in the comments if you're watching it on social media for our YouTube channel. That's where the full video will be, is on the YouTube channel. So we'll post that in the comments, man. And thank you guys. Love y'all.
I appreciate you. Yep. Too.